a lot of countries have, a majority of Europe, like England, France, Spain, have banned it. That was in 2007 when they started doing that. And since then, Israel, India, Canada, Argentina, Australia have all, those are some examples that have banned using animal testing for cosmetics.
So we're pretty much one of the last.
Yeah.
So is there a difference in how the animals are treated based on whether it's a cosmetic testing or medical testing? I mean, when Mr. Robinson mentioned Pantene, I'm picturing like washing the dog's hair. Like he's just a really clean dog. So is that like to me, I'm like, okay, if we're just gonna give him a bath every day and see how shiny his coat is, like what's the problem with that? Whereas when I think medical testing, I think more, well, let's give them this drug and see if they die or not. So like, I feel like it's almost, I don't know, if you're okay with medical but not cosmetics, in my head, medical seems more dangerous to the animals. Can you clarify any of that?
Well, with cosmetics, it's not the final product that's being tested, it's generally the chemicals in the product. So the dogs aren't being washed with shampoo so that they're clean. It's the chemical in the shampoo that is probably in much like, it's more concentrated, it's not mixed with other things because they're trying to see how it will specifically react to that one chemical.
So when I bathe my 3-year-old with Johnson & Johnson and it says no tear formula, they verified that by testing that on animals then?
Yes.
They
probably, yeah.
For 72 hours, I think we heard earlier. Right?
Yeah, the trace test, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, my child does like the fact that it doesn't make it cry, so that's good. Neither here nor there. All right, well, you've convinced us all. No animal testing. We're all against it. We're all completely against it. What do we do about that? I mean, because you said that the United States, I believe, to Mrs. Shannon's point, is probably on an island, or maybe we do it more than most other developed countries. Do we have any influence in that? If I want to start today and I agree with PETA and we're going to stop all this and it's all bad, though chicken is still tasty, what do we do? What do we do as a country? Do we have any influence outside of our country?
I mean, like a major thing that would change because of that is a lot of our goods that we import to China, we wouldn't have that connection anymore because they require animal testing as of right now. So that would go down.
Explain that to me again. So goods from China wouldn't be available?
Well,
explain that to me a little bit.
I mean, they could still be available, but a lot of their goods are animal tested cosmetic-wise,
Okay.
and I'm sure medically-wise, I don't know if we share that kind of thing or not. But and our good, like if we were to ship, like I know Mary Kay sells in China, and they do use animal testing because they have to have that in order to trade with China.
Okay.
So that their sales in China would go down if we banned animal testing because Mary Kay would no longer be able to test their products on animals.
I like where you're going here. Does anybody else see a benefit of this? Mrs. Scott's talking about trade. She's talking about influence on other countries. We can't set laws for other countries, right? Why might this be helpful if I'm now way against animal testing, it's really bad, chicken's still tasty. Why is this trade issue, why is that helpful to our cause?
I mean,
It would maybe cause China to reevaluate.
There you go.
If we weren't trading with them, because already there have been many conflicts with big companies like Lush and Paul Mitchell who refuse to test on animals.
Okay.
And so they don't sell any of their products in China, even though they would probably have a really big following there, based just off the population and their products being so widely liked. So it has already proven to be somewhat of an issue for China, but if the United States did make it more widespread, then they possibly would have to change things.
So if we're one of the major importers of Chinese toys and we don't like lead paint, and we say we're not importing toys with lead paint, don't we think China might stop painting their toys with lead paint? I'm not saying they do.
I never thought of that. That's
Yeah,
a great way to maybe help it. I know you could also join, they have like an animal rights movement, and I don't know if it can like be a member or anything, but like ways you could do is like, obviously when you're going and you're buying your product, you can look to see if they have, I printed out a picture of one of these on it, and it tells you, this one's actually a little bit different. This one doesn't mean.
Is that a bunny with heart ears?
It looks like it to me.
Yeah, I like that.
The middle one, these two end ones means they haven't been tested on animals, nothing in the product nor the product. But the middle one means that the product hasn't been tested on animals, but it could have had other ingredients that haven't been tested on animals used in that product. So it's a little bit different on that one. but you can always check that when you go.
Say cruelty free, is that what it says?
Yes.
Okay.
You can always check that when you go and get your product, or you can donate to like organizations like PETA. I know PETA was based in India, and they have different organizations that you can
Cows are very sacred there.
yeah help,
Yeah.
and that could help with the whole movement. So
Okay.
So do you think if we all stopped purchasing products that were tested on animals, would that make an influence?
I think it will.
Depends on like the amount of people you got.
Yeah, it depends on how many people actually did it, but I think if a large majority, especially if like the U.S. did it, then they would have to again reevaluate the way they're making products.
So how motivated are you ladies? If you are I'm picking on Pantene and I apologize to Procter & Gamble, but if you're a Pantene user and have always been because it makes your hair shiny and smooth or whatever, and now you go home today and you don't see that label, and so you go, well, wait a minute, I know all this great stuff because I am now an expert. Let me look it up on their website. Let me go find out. And oh my goodness, they do. They test on animals or they deal with China, so they have to. What would you do? Would what you've learned here cause you to take action? Would you switch products? Would you? And what if that product's more expensive? What if my $5 bottle of Pantene is now a $10 of animal cruelty-free testing little heart bunny ears? Would you go there? Is that something that you're willing to do?
Yeah, well, when I became vegetarian, I also started using cruelty-free cosmetics, and it really isn't more expensive. There are alternatives that are more expensive,
Okay.
and they don't test on animals, but you can also go to Walmart, Target, any place, and find plenty of cruelty-free, non-animal testing products that are in the same price range as everything else that you would use and still effective. So I would definitely advocate changing.
Ms. Scott?
I mean, it's not hard to change. I know a lot of because I use Mary Kay for my makeup.
Mhm.
I'm sure my shampoo is not free of animal testing. But
Are you
it's really-
motivated to look into that now after
Yeah, I
doing
mean,
this
it's not a
research?
hard change to make.
Okay. There's more shampoos out there, is what you're
Yeah,
saying?
there's more shampoos.
Okay. Okay.
I actually found out that the makeup that I use is actually not tested on animals, so I don't have to change that. But
Yes.
I think I will look into changing some of my other products because it's not hard to just quick look it up on the internet, and then next time you go to the store, buy one that's maybe not that much more expensive, but for the right thing.
What about medication though? When they like the only medication for a specific treatment, maybe
Yeah.
has been tested on animals.
Go
Do
to
you
Lo-
not take the
Ask Lauren, she got off the look on that last one.
So the medication, okay, so I think that the medication part, can you say your question?
Okay, so, well, let me just give you a for example. For example, I have celiac disease, so I've had to actually go back, and luckily my husband's a pharmacist, but I have to check with him to see which medications have gluten in them, because a lot of them do. Nobody would ever think of that, So let's say, I don't know, you're a diabetic and you have to take insulin or whatever, and that medicine was tested, on animals. If that's the only thing that you have to take that would make you better, what do you think you would do?
I would probably take it.
Regardless of whether it was tested
Probably.
medically?
Yeah.
I think it kind of has to start at the source rather than the consumer on the medical side. It has to start with the laws and how the animals are treated before the consumers can stop taking.
Don't you think, though, that wouldn't change until the people behind those, changed? So,
I see what
Let's-
you're saying.
Again, I come from a background at UK Med Center where I worked with a lot of people who are a lot smarter than me. And in talking with them about some of the animal testing that they did there, they're using mice, they're using rats. They're not holding their eyes open for 72 hours, putting chemicals in and see if it irritates them. What they're doing is they're using them to generate white blood cells, red blood cells, NK cells, all of these other things that they can then use in experiments. In some cases, they may be, not at UK, but in other places, they may be breeding animals for transplant organs. You can use pig valves in heart transplants, those sorts of things. So if I've got a loved one, and I kind of picked on Miss Scott earlier about a loved one, if I've got a loved one who needs a heart valve transplant, and there's not a donor available, but I can get, a pig valve, and it can be implanted, and I can live a long life, or my family member can live a long life. Is that okay? I mean, technically, that's medical testing, technically that's on animals. Is that okay, or are we not? We're not okay with that because it was a pig that was harmed in the making of this valve. Okay. What do we think?
I would be okay with that.
Okay. So,
I think I would too.
so the pig valve we're okay with? Okay. Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
like I said earlier, medically, normally I'm more inclined to approve than.
That was a good move. That was a good move. I can't be mean to you because you. But so, and we're okay with the mice then. So if I need cells out of a mouse to generate a medication or to somehow concoct something that goes for the treatment of a human being or maybe the abatement of a cancer or something, then that's okay. Just want to make sure I know where we're following.
Is there any indication, or are there any rules, like with the Welfare Act? Does a veterinarian have to be present with testing? Like, is there we can only resuscitate this rat 5 times before they've done their job?
Yeah.
Clear.
The
Clear.
Animal Welfare Act, it doesn't actually protect them from any of the testing side of things. It just regulates like their housing and just like the transport, and it requires the FDA requires people who sell animals to have a license to do that. But the animal welfare, it doesn't protect them from how they're treated during testing.
Is there any legislation that does?
Not in the US,
Okay. Again, I'm with you guys. I'm completely now against any animal testing at all, and I want to go get those bad guys who are testing on animals. Do we feel like we have a pretty good concept of who's testing on animals? I mean, is it well patrolled? Is there a police force that goes out and checks on animal? I mean, how do I make sure, other than going, you guys should not be testing on animals? How else? I mean, do we feel like we have a pretty good hand on who is testing on animals, and do we feel like we've got good regulations to make sure that nothing nefarious is happening? How do we feel about the reports of how many people are testing on animals?
The FDA is the people who go in and inspect the laboratory as they're doing the experiments and stuff, but I had read a lot that they don't really go that often, and that it kind of gets looked over. And I know a lot of undercover investigations have been done, and they found that it's not safe.
So if I've got a laboratory, I can pretty much count on the FDA is not going to show up every week?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. What's that? Yes. Yeah, like on the windows. Okay. So we feel like maybe there's some things going on underneath the nose of whoever the regulatory commission is, which in this case you say is the FDA. Is that right?
yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of loopholes that they
Okay.
can get through and not have the FDA. I mean, the FDA doesn't regulate it very much,
Mm-hmm.
and so through that, there's easy ways to get around the AMU.
Do we have any statistics on how underreported we might think that animal testing is? I mean, we know about this batch and these laboratories and those sorts of things, but there's good likelihood that there's a whole bunch of other people who are doing this that we don't know about. Do we have any feel for how much we know about and how much we don't?
We really don't. That's
Yeah.
that's kind of the bad thing about it, that you really, even when they try to regulate it, there's still so much that goes unchecked. And so
One statistic that I found, and I'm kind of curious your response to this, is that up to 90% of animals used in U.S. labs are not counted in the official statistics of animal testing.
That's like the rice and the mackerats. and
Right?
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot of animals.
Yeah.
How do we get our hands around that? Do we get our hands around that? Because I'm with you. I'm totally anti-animal testing. Maybe medical. We'll talk. But how do we get our hands around that, ladies? What do we
Like,
do?
how do we fix that? Is
How do we
what
fix
you're
that? Yes.
I think it starts with the laws
Okay.
about the animals.
Well, we've
how
got
they're
laws, right? We've got the
treated.
AWA, right?
How they're treated. Because it doesn't really, again, the AWA doesn't have any law about how they're treated. It just has to do with the standards, like the caging, like there can be a certain amount of rats or monkeys or anything in a cage.
Okay.
Like, and it has to do with the environment, like they have to have food and water and stuff, but it doesn't have to do with like how they're treated while they're being tested on.
Okay. Does it specify what animals can't be tested on? I'm just curious. You just
It
struck that up on my head.
protects primates and
Can we test on horses?
I don't think it said anything about horses.
Just curious.
Have there been any statistics that the testing on certain animals is negatively affecting their population? I mean, I get that rats multiply like crazy, but have we seen a decline in a certain type of bird or in, I don't know, a certain type of dog because we're testing on them that they've proven to
Don't
be
say
useful?
golden retriever.
I'm not, I didn't come across any statistics about that, but there could be possible.
Ladies, I'm curious, where do most veterinarians fall on this issue?
I mean, we didn't really look into that a lot, but I would think veterinarians, they go to school to help animals, and so I feel like for the most part they would maybe not condone it, or there might be some instances medically, because they are very medically oriented. There have been some vaccinations that help animals as well, so in that case they would maybe approve it, but for the most part it's more cruel to animals than it helps.
You just said something interesting real quick. So do they do animal testing, obviously for cosmetic and medical research for humans? Are there animal testing that's done to help animals, like cancer in dogs or?
Yeah. But many animals and humans share the same diseases and problems sometimes, so it could help the animal too if they created the.
Yeah, there have been like some vaccines start, like the rabies and tetanus. Those are things that also affect animals, and those were the cures for that were found through animal testing. So it does help them, and it helps us as well.
So
that
is that okay? Because if we're curing other animals' diseases by testing on animals, are we okay there then? Because if I'm saving dogs' lives by testing on a dog, is that okay?
Yeah, I think it kind of ties into how even for drugs for people, you know, they might test on animals, but they have to go through clinical trials too, where they test it on people before they
Right.
release it to the general public. So I think that's where it kind of compares, like testing on animals is kind of like skipping a pre-step and going straight to clinical trials.
Okay.
So it kind of all depends how you would see that too. But
Well, if I've got a terminal illness, I might sign up for an experimental drug
Yeah.
study. I may, kind of shoot the moon and see if this might help me. Isn't that the same that we would be doing to an animal in that case?
I think the
I think
difference
it's outlawed,
is,
but, yeah.
I think the difference is that the animals can't communicate with us like another
There you
person
go.
would, and so they don't really make the decision. That it would just be like if somebody
My
came
dog
up
communicates
to
with
you,
me all the time.
Yeah, but if somebody came up to you and was like, "Hey, you're
Mm-hmm.
terminally ill, so you have to be part of this clinical trial,"
Okay.
you might have an issue with it instead of just being able to make the choice for yourself.
Do we agree with Katie, ladies?
Yes.
We do?
Is there any difference when we talk about testing? Because we mentioned the Animal Welfare Act. Is there a difference between talking about an animal's welfare and about their rights?
Animals have rights.
I think they kind of go together because, I mean, looking at humans, our part of our rights are welfare. Like in the Constitution, our rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so if I know those aren't necessarily the same for animals, but looking at it from that perspective, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, their happiness would be their welfare, and so that would be sort of considered their rights, if you were to think.
So animals do have rights?
Sure. I mean,
I think they do.
yeah,
Okay.
to a point they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who do you think gives them the rights?
What I think are their rights.
No, who do you think gives them their rights?
Biblically, I think God does. God gives us all our rights, and I don't think humans give them their rights. So,
Ladies, is there anything else that you came up with in your research that we haven't covered here that you would like us to know? Maybe something that just really caught you off guard or surprised you, or that you just think is a really great fact that you need to get out there that we haven't brought up in this discussion yet?
I think something that caught my attention is that a lot of the arguments for people who test on animals is that we have a lot of the same like DNA as animals, especially for chimpanzees and stuff, primates, for medical research. And while I said I agreed with medical research, I actually did have a problem with that because it caught my attention, because I could react to a medicine